My name is Marissa, I'm 34. And that evening the first thing I noticed was the smell. Burnt coffee, bitter, acrid, the kind that clings to papers after hours of sitting under a desk lamp. It curled up from the abandoned mug on the corner of my father's oak desk. If you've ever faced something like this, comment where you're reading from. The light in the study was still on, throwing long shadows across neatly stacked folders. I was only there to drop off an envelope he'd asked for, but as I set it down, the corner of another document caught my eye. The drawer beneath it wasn't fully shut. A slip of ivory paper poked out, heavy stock with a notary seal faintly embossed. My pulse ticked faster. I reached for it. The edges were crisp, untouched. The heading read, Addendum to Last Will and Testament. My throat tightened. Below the dense paragraphs, there were 3 names listed. My sister's. My mother's. And then the blank space where mine should have been. The room felt colder suddenly, though the radiator hissed behind me. I eased the drawer fully open. More envelopes. Legal stationery. Recent dates just last week. All of them referencing the estate. All of them signed in the careful slant of my father's hand. Not a single page with my name. I stood frozen, one palm flat against the desk, the smell of scorched coffee thick in my nose. Upstairs I could hear faint laughter. My sister's voice, my mother's low reply. No one had told me anything. No one had even hinted. Yet here it was, written and sealed, my erasure. I slipped the envelope back exactly where it had been and stepped quietly into the hall. My fingers were trembling, though I forced them still as I smoothed my coat sleeve. The light above buzzed faintly. I didn't know yet that in 11 days the paper I'd just seen would become the centerpiece of a battle that no one in this family was prepared to lose. The kitchen was too bright the next morning. White tile, polished counters, the smell of lemon cleaner sharp in the air. My sister perched on a stool, scrolling her phone, nails clicking against the glass screen. A half-eaten croissant sat on a porcelain plate beside her, flakes scattered like careless confetti. My father sat at the head of the table, newspaper folded but unread. My mother fussed with the kettle though it had already boiled. The usual choreography. Marissa, my father said without looking up, his tone clipped. You'll be fine without support. You've made your own way, haven't you? The word caught like a hook. Support. My eyes flicked to the envelope in his briefcase on the chair beside him. Notary seal glinting faintly under the strap. My sister smirked, still scrolling. Honestly, it's better this way. Cleaner. No drama about dividing things 3 ways. She didn't glance at me, just adjusted the sleeve of her silk blouse. I gripped the edge of the chair. When were you going to tell me? My voice came out lower than I expected, steady though my pulse hammered. My mother poured tea with exaggerated calm. Darling, it's not personal. You have your job, your apartment. You don't need to rely on inheritance the way your sister does. She's more rooted. Rooted. As if being unmarried and childless disqualified me from belonging. The clock on the wall ticked to 8:15. Outside, traffic hummed. The ordinary sounds felt absurd against the sharpness of what I'd just heard. I pushed back my chair. The legs scraped too loudly against the tile. I see, I said simply. My hands itched to reach for the briefcase, to pull out the papers and slap them onto the gleaming counter. But not yet. Not here. Because in that moment, between the smell of scorched lemon polish and the taste of copper rising in my mouth, something settled hard inside me. I won't do this anymore. I wasn't always the outsider. At least that's what I used to tell myself. When I was 12, I spent entire summers in my grandmother's study, balancing her checkbook, lining up receipts in neat piles while my sister lounged in the garden sipping lemonade. Grandma would smile at me, that rare approving smile, and say, "You have a head for order, Marissa." I thought that meant something. By 16, I was the one staying up past midnight with her, making sure bills were paid, property taxes filed on time. My sister never lifted a finger, but she got the praise. She was charming, photogenic, the face of the family. I was the ledger, silent and invisible. After college, I built my own path. Finance, downtown office, a 1-bedroom walk-up with leaky radiators, but mine alone. No one helped. No handouts. I thought independence would finally earn respect. Instead, it became the excuse. You don't need help, my father would say whenever tuition came due, whenever rent checks bounced for my sister. Guess whose bills got paid? Not mine. The pattern hardened. Family dinners where my achievements, promotions, projects, actual stability, were dismissed in a single nod while my sister's every minor success was toasted with champagne. Birthdays where I was handed a scarf on clearance while she unwrapped diamond earrings for her future. It wasn't just favoritism. It was training. A slow, steady campaign to convince me that my role was to survive without complaint while they redirected resources elsewhere. And what's at stake now? Not just money. The estate. 2 properties. The lake house worth $480,000. The downtown condo valued near $700,000. Plus investments tied up in the firm my grandfather built. Generational wealth, enough to secure futures. Enough to erase debts, fund ventures, build legacies. All of it quietly shifted away from me. I used to think being good, being useful would be enough to earn my seat at the table. But I see it now, I was never meant to have a chair. I was meant to keep the table standing. And that's exactly why, when I stumbled across that envelope in the study, something in me snapped into place. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to act. It came 2 nights later when I couldn't sleep. The radiator in my apartment hissed like it was boiling secrets out of the pipes. I sat at the small kitchen table, laptop open, phone buzzing with low battery warnings. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, restless. On a whim, I logged into the shared digital vault my grandmother had once used to store scanned documents. I half expected the password to be disabled, but the familiar phrase, her favorite hymn, still worked. The folder tree opened, a neat column of dates and file names. At first, it was the usual. Tax filings, utilities, scans of faded photographs. But then I saw a folder marked Amendments, 2023. My breath caught. I clicked. Inside, PDFs stacked one after another. The first, Addendum signed October 14th. I opened it. The notary seal clear as day. My father's signature scrawled at the bottom. And the names, my sister, my mother. Mine absent. But that wasn't the part that made my skin prickle. Halfway down the page was a clause in bold. All prior beneficiaries not explicitly named are hereby revoked and excluded. Revoked. Excluded. The language was brutal in its finality. I scrolled further, heart pounding. There, attached at the end, was a scan of a handwritten note from my grandmother, dated months before she passed. It read, "Ensure equal distribution. Both daughters. No exceptions. Her loops and slants unmistakable. 2 realities side by side. My grandmother's clear intent, and my father's cold revision." I printed it. The machine sputtered, spitting out pages warm to the touch. I held them in my hands, the paper edges cutting into my skin. For a long time I just stared at the handwriting. I could almost hear her voice, steady but kind. "Don't let them twist it, Marissa. You know what's fair." I whispered it out loud, tasting the weight of the words. I make a choice. And I did. I needed confirmation. My eyes alone weren't enough. Doubt gnawed at me like a rat in the walls. Maybe I was misreading, maybe there was some technicality. I wasn't going to walk into war with only my outrage. So 3 mornings later, I sat in a narrow office that smelled faintly of dust and peppermint tea. My grandmother's old attorney, the one who had handled her estate for decades, shuffled papers with careful precision. His desk was cluttered but organized. Yellow pads stacked, pens aligned in a cup, a bronze clock ticking softly on the shelf behind him. I slid the printouts across the desk. The addendum. The note. "I need you to tell me if this is legitimate," I said. My voice felt too loud in the small room. He adjusted his glasses, reading line by line. The silence stretched, only broken by the faint creak of his chair. Finally, he looked up, his expression grave. "This clause," he tapped the bold line with his pen, "is absolute. If it stands, you're out entirely." My stomach dropped. "But," he continued, lifting the handwritten page, "this changes everything. This is your grandmother's instruction. Dated, signed. If you can prove this was intentionally disregarded, you don't just have a moral argument. You have a legal one." I swallowed hard. "So the amendment? Contest it if you want it to be." His eyes met mine steady. "But you need to act quickly. Estates move fast once signatures harden. You're looking at weeks, maybe days before assets are locked." The bronze clock behind him ticked to 10:47. The numbers etched themselves into my mind like a deadline. I sat back, papers trembling in my lap. The decision wasn't abstract anymore. It had dates, legal weight, a countdown. When I left his office, the cold air slapped my face, but it only sharpened me. The choice was clear. I wasn't just going to fight for my share. I was going to fight for her intent. The next morning, I walked into a law office downtown with the kind of determination that tastes metallic in your mouth. Frost clung to the glass doors, the lobby humming faintly with the smell of copier toner and carpet cleaner. My bag was heavy with documents, printouts, the handwritten note, copies of the will. The associate who met me couldn't have been more than 30, sharp navy suit, voice brisk. "We can file an injunction to freeze the estate immediately," she said, flipping through the papers with practiced fingers. "That will stop any transfers until a judge reviews the documents." "Injunction," I repeated, as if saying it aloud could make it more solid. She nodded. "It buys you time. Without it, assets could be moved or liquidated in days. With it, everything halts." The procedure was strangely simple in its brutality. Step 1, sign the retainer. My pen felt too heavy, but the ink flowed steady across the line. Step 2, notarize the petition. The clerk stamped it with a dull thunk, red seal pressing into the paper like a brand. Step 3, file with the court. The associate slipped the folder into a courier envelope. By 2 p.m., the estate is frozen. When I walked back onto the street, the city noise felt muffled, like I was moving underwater. But underneath the disorientation was something sharper, control. That evening my father called. His voice was measured, but I caught the edge beneath it. "The firm just informed me of an injunction. Do you know anything about this?" "Yes," I said evenly. A pause. Then clipped. "You don't know what you've set in motion." I could almost see his jaw tightening on the other end. Quiet shock. Exactly what I wanted. I hung up before he could say more. My hands shook, but not from fear. From release. For the first time, the script wasn't his. It was mine. The freeze landed like a stone in a still pond, quiet at first, then rippling everywhere. 2 days later, my sister showed up at my apartment. She wore a cashmere coat, but her eyes gave her away. Dark smudges underneath, lips pressed thin. She didn't even wait for me to invite her in. "You embarrassed us," she said flatly, stepping past me. The scent of her perfume, something floral and expensive, filled the narrow hallway. "Do you realize the accounts are locked? Dad can't move a cent. The condo sale is stalled. The lake house renovation paused. Do you know how many calls I've had to field?" I set 2 mugs on the counter. One chipped, one clean. I handed her the chipped one deliberately. "That's the point," I said. She scoffed, the sound sharp. "This isn't about you. It's about protecting the family legacy. Grandma wanted harmony, not exclusion." I cut in, sliding the handwritten note across the table. Her eyes flicked to it, then away fast. "You don't understand the pressure Dad's under." She tried again, softer now. "The firm. The taxes. You've always been independent. Why not let the rest of us handle this?" I leaned back steady. "Because it isn't yours to handle alone." The silence stretched, punctuated only by the hum of the refrigerator. Finally, she pushed the mug aside and stood. "You'll regret this." I didn't answer. She left with the same sharp click of heels she'd arrived with. That night, my phone buzzed with messages. Cousins. An uncle I hadn't heard from in years. "Why would you do this? Can't you work it out quietly?" The guilt came dressed in politeness, but it was still guilt. And yet something shifted. A cousin I barely spoke to sent a different message. "Good for you." Someone had to stand up. A small win. Not the end, but enough to steady me. For the first time, I wasn't apologizing for defending my place. The turning point came in a manila envelope slid under my apartment door. No return address, no note. Just a thick bundle of papers rubber-banded tight. Inside, a forensic report. Bank transfers, email printouts, time-stamped records. 6 years of estate funds quietly funneled into shell accounts tied to my sister's name, and a Delaware LLC with my mother listed as consultant. I traced the numbers with my finger, each column a betrayal in black ink. The amounts weren't small. $42,000 here. $87,500 there. One transfer for $112,000 labeled client outreach, straight into a personal account. At the bottom was a post-it scrawled in a hand I recognized, the old attorney's. Now you know the full picture. Do what you will. The next family meeting was inevitable. They summoned me to the house with a text that read more like a command. I went. The dining room was staged. Mahogany polished, silverware aligned, the illusion of control. My father sat at the head, face pale but defiant. My sister leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. My mother's pearls caught the chandelier light. "You've done enough damage," my father began. His voice carried authority, but I heard the crack beneath it. "Withdraw the injunction. End this before you ruin us all." I placed the envelope on the table, sliding it toward him. "You ruined yourselves." My sister grabbed it, flipped it open and froze. Her eyes darted across the pages, color draining from her cheeks. My mother reached for her, but too late. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Finally, my father rasped, "Where did you get this?" I kept my tone calm. Truth has a way of surfacing. He slammed a fist onto the table. "You think this saves you? It destroys everything." I shook my head slowly. "No. It destroys the lie. There's no going back now." For the first time they had no script. Just silence, hollow and raw. 3 months later the lake house sits empty. The renovation crew packed up weeks ago, invoices unpaid. The downtown condo sale dissolved under the weight of frozen accounts. The firm's partners whisper about internal reviews and breach of fiduciary duty. None of that is my burden anymore. My apartment is quiet tonight. A candle burns on the windowsill, cedar and smoke, the scent low and grounding. The radiator hums, but it feels like background music instead of static. I didn't win a fortune. The court battle is still unfolding. Attorneys trading drafts and deadlines. But the estate is secured, frozen under the weight of evidence that can't be erased. I have leverage. I have space. Most of all, I have clarity. Last week, my sister called from a block number. Her voice was small, rehearsed. "We can fix this if you just..." Click. I didn't let her finish. 2 days ago, my father sent a letter. Not apology, not acknowledgement. Just a single sentence. "You've betrayed us." I folded it neatly and placed it in the drawer with utility bills. It holds no power there. What I keep close instead is my grandmother's note, the one in her careful handwriting. Both daughters. No exceptions. It rests in a fireproof safe now beside my passport, birth certificate, and a new leather-bound journal. This morning I wrote the first line. I will not shrink to fit their comfort. I'm not rebuilding relationships that thrived on silence. I'm building days that are mine, long walks before work, evenings with friends who see me, plans for 6 months out that don't depend on anyone else's permission. The estate fight will play out. They'll deny, they'll twist, they'll rewrite. That's theirs to carry. I don't carry it anymore. The boundaries are simple now: my time, my money, my voice. No more bargaining those away for a seat at a table that was never set for me. I sit at my own. The coffee is hot, the air is steady, and the ledger finally is balanced.